My son told me dinner was canceled. But when I arrived at the restaurant, I found them all seated, laughing and feasting behind my back on my dime. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd used me. So I gave them a surprise they would never forget. The moment I spoke, the entire table fell into a deafening silence. And when I walked out without paying, taking the car keys with me, I left behind a storm they never saw coming. Hi Reddit, my name is Valerie. I'm 56 years old, and I've been a widow for nearly 20 years. My husband died in a construction accident when our eldest son, Thomas, was only 12 years old. Since then, I've stood as the sole foundation of this family, mother, provider, protector, everything. I gave up my youth, shelved every dream I ever had, and poured every ounce of myself into raising my 3 children, Thomas, Emily, and Josh. There were no vacations, no new clothes, no weekends away. I worked 2 jobs, skipped doctor appointments, and smiled through exhaustion, so my kids never had to skip meal. My life became a quiet sacrifice, a silent offering of love laid down at their feet. So you can imagine the gut-wrenching betrayal I felt the night I realized they had not only gone to dinner without me, but had used my credit card to do it. The betrayal didn't start with a bang. No, it crept in quietly, cloaked in normalcy. That Friday morning, Thomas had sent me a cheerful message confirming dinner plans. He said he'd made reservations at Ember Tone, a sleek, modern restaurant downtown. The kind of place I'd never dare splurge on for myself. He said it was his treat, a celebration for a recent promotion. My heart swelled. For once, I felt seen, not as the family workhorse, but as someone worth celebrating. I felt touched, honored, and above all, loved. I spent the whole day preparing for that dinner. I visited the salon, got a trim and a blowout, and picked out my nicest dress. I even wore the pearl earrings my late husband had given me for our 10th anniversary, delicate little reminders of a love that once defined my life. As I stood in front of the mirror that evening, I felt proud. Proud of the life I had fought tooth and nail to build. And in that moment, I believed my children were proud of me too. But just 2 hours before the reservation, Thomas called. "Hey, Mom," he began, his voice tinged with feigned regret. "Sorry, but Sarah's not feeling great. We'll have to reschedule. We'll do something next week, okay?" My heart sank. Asked if Sarah was all right, and he assured me it was just exhaustion from work. He apologized again, flatly, then hung up. I sat on the couch that night in silence, reheating a bowl of soup while the television played reruns of a cooking show I'd seen a dozen times before. I tried not to feel small. I tried not to feel forgotten. But fate has a strange way of peeling back the curtain. At 7:48 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Linda, our old neighbor, and one of my closest friends. It was a blurry photo taken through the window of a restaurant, and beneath it a cheerful message. "You were at Emberstone tonight? Everyone looks great. Let's catch up soon." My blood ran cold. I opened the photo. There they were, Thomas, Sarah, Emily, Josh, even baby Mia in her little stroller. All seated at a long table under Emberstone's ambient lighting, clinking glasses, smiling, laughing, like a picture-perfect family. A family that had no place for me. I stared at the image, my hands trembling, not with sadness, but with something far more volatile. A rising tide of rage and betrayal twisted in my chest, burning like a flame that had been waiting for years to ignite. I grabbed my keys and drove to the restaurant, still dressed in the very outfit I had picked for what was supposed to be our shared evening. I didn't even understand the full weight of my fury until I stepped into the restaurant and told the hostess I was meeting my family. She smiled and pointed me to a booth in the back. They didn't see me until I was right beside them. The shift was instant. Laughter silenced. Forks froze in midair. Thomas's eyes widened, his expression draining of color. Emily's mouth fell open in shock. Sarah blinked rapidly, searching for words, while Josh looked down at the table as though he could disappear into it. "Mom," Thomas asked, his voice thin. "What are you doing here?" I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene yet. I kept my voice low, controlled. "I thought dinner was canceled," I said. Sarah jumped in with some stammered excuse about how they hadn't planned this in advance, and how they thought I wouldn't want to come if Sarah wasn't feeling well earlier. Her voice wavered. Her lie was thin, crumbling. I turned to the waitress, who had just placed a fresh round of appetizers on the table. "Can I see the bill, please?" She hesitated, glancing awkwardly at Thomas, but handed me the leather folio. My heart dropped as I saw the card number, ending in 3142.
Mean it.
The emergency credit card I had given Thomas back in college, just in case. I'd asked him to return it multiple times over the years. Each time, he'd said he would. Each time, he didn't. My hand shook, but not from nerves, from a fury so raw it threatened to explode. I looked up. "You canceled dinner with me, then came here anyway, and you used my card to pay for it." Thomas rose, trying to reach for my arm like he could calm the storm he had summoned. I took a step back, lifting a hand to stop him.
No, don't.
"Let me speak." I looked at each of them. Emily, unable to meet my eyes. Josh, pretending to be surprised. Sarah, sitting in silent shame. And Thomas, looking more annoyed than ashamed. "I always told myself I would go to my grave loving you three," I said, my voice trembling. "But I have never, in my entire life, felt more invisible than I do right now.
You used me.
You wanted the comfort of my money without the burden of my presence. And you know what? I'm done." Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the spare keys, the backup set to the car I had signed over to Thomas 2 years ago when his broke down. "This," I said, holding up the keys. "I'm taking it back tonight." Thomas's voice turned sharp. "You can't take my car. Your name's not on the registration." "But mine is," I interrupted coldly. "Figure it out. Call a cab." And I turned and walked out. I sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes, my hands clutching the wheel, staring ahead in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat, stunned, not just by the evening, but by the deeper realization. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was who they had become. And I wasn't going to ignore it anymore. That night, I logged into my bank accounts and revoked all secondary access. I canceled the credit card Thomas had used and filed a fraudulent charge claim. But I didn't stop there. I froze the shared account he'd quietly siphoned from over the years for Sarah's baby shower, their vacation last spring, God knows what else. I also called my lawyer. I had always planned to leave everything, my house, my savings, my life insurance, to my children equally. That changed. I rewrote my will. Emily and Josh would receive conditional shares, based on continued contact and basic decency. Thomas? Nothing. And Sarah? I didn't even include her name. I blocked their numbers. But before I did, I sent one final message in our family group chat. "You feasted without me, using my love and generosity like it was disposable. Enjoy the silence. You've earned it." I haven't spoken to any of them since. And honestly, the silence, it's peaceful. It's been 3 weeks since that night at Emberstone. 3 weeks since I stood there, watching my own children enjoy a meal I paid for, in a life I built, without even thinking I deserved a seat at the table. 3 weeks since I walked out, car keys in hand, and closed the chapter on a family I had once bled for. And with every passing day, I feel stronger. But I wasn't finished. I wasn't going to let their betrayal fade quietly. I combed through every bank statement from the last 2 years. Every charge. Sushi delivery, $1.84. A crib and nursery accessories, $2.12. Concert tickets, takeout, groceries, subscriptions. Thousands of dollars, spent on their lives without a second thought. I had been so desperate to be needed, to still feel like their mother, that I had let myself become a ghost with a credit limit. I filed a formal report with my credit card company. Thomas's access was severed overnight. He tried to reach out, first with apologies, clearly written by Sarah, then with anger. He accused me of destroying his family. Said I was cruel. Said I had lost my mind. What he didn't understand was that I wasn't just cutting him off financially, I was cutting him off emotionally, permanently. That same week, I had my lawyer draft a repayment notice for $3,000. Just a fraction of what he owed. A symbolic number. A line drawn in ink and principle. It was hand-delivered to his office. He didn't respond. But Sarah did. She emailed me directly. This is harassment. He's your son. You're a grandmother now. Is this really the legacy you want to leave behind? Legacy? I laughed out loud reading it. I had already given them my legacy. Every ounce of love, every dollar I could spare, every moment of my life. What they did was not a mistake.
It was a choice.
And Sarah had the audacity to call me vindictive? I wrote one line in reply. Enjoy your dinners. You've already had your last one on me. And yet I had one last move to play. One final act of poetic justice. Years ago, Thomas had helped me set up my smart home system. It was all still tied to my Amazon account, which, unbeknownst to him, was still logged into his devices. I checked the settings. There it was, his household account, still leeching off mine. One click, removed. Then I changed the password. He couldn't even access his playlists or digital purchases anymore. I wiped all payment methods, but left the account intact. Just enough for him to see the doors he once walked through were now locked. Emily was the only one I hadn't scorched the earth with. She had always been the quiet one, the peacekeeper. But silence in the face of cruelty is still complicity. And yet, when a handwritten letter arrived from her, my heart caught. She said she hadn't known the dinner was planned without me until the day of. That she felt sick about it. That she cried after I left. She said she had no excuse, only shame. And she begged for a chance to rebuild. Emily was the only one I hadn't scorched the earth with. She had always been the quiet one, the peacekeeper. But silence in the face of cruelty is still complicity. And yet, when a handwritten letter arrived from her, my heart caught. She said she hadn't known the dinner was planned without me until the day of. That she felt sick about it. That she cried after I left. She said she had no excuse, only shame. And she begged for a chance to rebuild. At first, I didn't respond. But something in her words chipped away at the wall I had built. So I agreed to meet, publicly, neutrally, at a coffee shop near my home. She came alone. Her eyes were swollen. She looked older, heavier with guilt. And for the first time in what felt like forever, someone in my family listened. She told me she'd moved out of the apartment she shared with Josh. That they fought after the Emberstone disaster. That she wanted to be better. I told her the truth. I wasn't interested in rebuilding what we had. That version of our family was gone. But maybe we could create something new if it was earned, not expected. She cried, nodded, and we hugged. Not out of habit, but out of shared grief. Out of hope. Later that week, Thomas tried again. One final email. I hope you're happy. You broke up the family. I didn't reply. But I did create a new, anonymous email and sent one line back. No. You did that when you sat me out of my own life. Then I deleted the account. Now, months later, my world is quieter.
Smaller.
But real. I see Emily once a week. Baby Mia knows my name. We're making new memories, ones not poisoned by expectation or greed. And the rest? They've gone quiet. Funny how loud they were, laughing, toasting, feasting on betrayal, until I stopped speaking. And when I did, they finally heard what they never listened to before, the silence of a mother who has nothing left to give and everything left to protect.